Nellie Bly, a reporter for the ages. Insane asylums, biased communications, and a reporter to shatter all expectations. Nellie Bly, a New York journalist from the late 19th century, used investigative reporting to communicate the need for understanding of societal issues by becoming a media sensation for her work in the insane asylum on Blackwell's Island. Nellie Bly acted as a role model for reporters and women everywhere, propelling female reporters into the spotlight like never before. There once was a girl named Elizabeth Cochrane, nicknamed Pink. When she was only 6 years old, her father died, and her widowed mother, named Mary Jane, was forced to marry a man named Jack Ford, who failed to communicate that he was an abusive drunk. After 5 years, she divorced him and moved away to Pittsburgh. To help support their family, Pink took on odd jobs as a housekeeper, nanny, and more. She read an article in the Pittsburgh Dispatch about how a woman working outside the home was a monstrosity. Pink took offense and communicated her feelings in a letter to the editor, wondering how else they were to survive, as the article had assumed that all women had a husband or father to take care of them. The Dispatch hired her, kicking off her reporting career, and chose her the pen name Nellie Bly after a popular song about a servant girl. In May 1887, she left her family for the first time, moving to New York City, looking for a job at a major newspaper. 4 months later, she was almost out of money when she finally found a job at the New York World, led by Joseph Pulitzer. At that point in time, rumors abounded about the injustices in mental health facilities. Some asylums had already been exposed, their unethical activities communicated to the public, and the public eye was directed upon those that hadn't been exposed quite yet. Notorious among these was the asylum on Blackwell's Island in New York, of which horrible stories perpetrated. Nellie Bly was assigned to infiltrate this asylum and report on conditions inside. Although she had heard the rumors about Blackwell's corruption, she didn't believe them. However, she was determined to find out the truth and communicate it to the public. She proceeded to convince a boarding house full of women, a judge, and many doctors and reporters that she was, without a shadow of a doubt, hopelessly insane. Once at Blackwell's, to her great surprise, the doctors and staff mistreated the patients inside. They were beating them, starving them, making them take baths that were essentially waterboarding, etc. Luckily for her, after 10 days, a lawyer from the World came and rescued her. She was very relieved, as she may have gone insane herself with too much more time inside. After Bly escaped Blackwell's Island, she needed to communicate her discoveries to the world. On October 9th, 1887, she released the first installment of her horrifying experiences in the New York World under the title Behind Asylum Bars. It was an instant success. It was published nationwide with great success throughout. It drew readers in with the flashy headlines and eye-catching pictures that the world was known for, but what kept their attention was Nellie Bly's novel style of communication. She wrote in the first person, giving lots of detail and her own running commentary on her circumstances. Rival newspapers sought to duplicate its success, including The Sun, the world's arch-rival, led by Charles A. Dana. Behind Asylum Bars only told half of the story, or how Nellie Bly got to Blackwell's. It did not report on what she did while there. Before the world had a chance to communicate the second installment, The Sun gave the story from second-hand sources in playing madwoman, stealing some of the world's glory while trying to cover for the wardens at Blackwell's. However, the article was counterproductive, as it simply gave the world ammo to insult them, calling their article nothing but excuses, apologies, and defenses for the medical personnel, and it considered the wardens blameless where they were clearly at fault. To quote The Sun, quote, "This night the evening meal consisted of tea and bread and butter and stewed fruit," end quote. While this is technically correct, Nellie Bly tells us the sad truth about the quality. Quote, I tried the bread, but the butter was so horrible that one could not eat it. My tea had no sugar, and it tasted as if it had been made in copper. End quote. At this point, the Sun had been thoroughly embarrassed, and Nellie Bly's fame was rising exponentially to the point where she was the most talked about reporter in New York City. Bly's article sparked the indignation of people far and wide, leading to mass pressure on politicians to change things in mental health institutions around the country. In New York, the grand jury used her articles as a reason to increase the budget for asylums by $1 million, 50,000 of which went to Blackwell's. Adjusting for inflation, the money sums would be worth about 25 times as much today. The newspaper articles by and about Nellie Bly spreading all over the country gave her instant fame, and in 1889 she circumnavigated the globe. As the public became fans of her and her communication style, newspaper heads tried to capitalize by hiring many more females to work on their staff and stand in the spotlight. Some reported on activities like jumping in front of a car or visiting a gambling den, topics which would have been too commonplace to be published if they were male. If they were boys, everyone would have thought that they were making a big deal over nothing. The public would have thought that anyone could choose to go gambling by themselves, and they didn't need to pay someone to tell them what it's like. It is only because they were female journalists, and therefore novel, that readers were interested enough to buy a newspaper. However, it is certain that Nellie Bly earned her position without any preferential treatment. Of course, one of the biggest impacts of her story is simply that it made her famous, opening doors for her. This enabled her to report on many other stories that helped people, everything from pretending to be a single mother to report on the clandestine child trade, to solving a mystery finding the family of a baby left on her doorstep, to visiting a feminist conference for the world, getting an interview with Susan B. Anthony herself. Simply put, Bly's first piece for the world spawned a new era of journalism. Nellie Bly's long-term impacts focused on the journalism industry. She was an early example that women could take on major, high-profile roles on sensitive topics. Although in the beginning many women abused this chance, over time the newspaper editors realized that women should be given the same opportunities as men. No more, no less. Women could be allowed to communicate big topics, but they had to be competent reporters instead of banking on their sex to sell copies. In addition to gender equality for journalists, Nellie Bly was one of the first pioneers of investigative journalism, and one of its subsets, undercover reporting. She used both many times throughout her career. In summary, a promising young reporter named Nellie Bly came to New York and was assigned to infiltrate the asylum on Blackwell's Island by the New York World. She did, and communicated with everyone about the horrible things she saw there. This sparked a journalism revolution, leading people the world over to focus on females in investigative journalism, reporting, and communication in any form. With each and every accomplishment, Nellie Bly gave other women the encouragement they needed to pursue their own dreams.